Our next speaker is a lady called Hannah Prowse, the CEO of Portsmouth Naval Base Property Trust. And in case you're not aware, the Trust is not only the landlord of the Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, it's also operators of the International Boat Building Training College in Portsmouth and the custodian of the Memorial Flotilla. So Hannah is talking to us today about the regeneration plans for the historic dockyard. For a moment I panicked. I couldn't see you, Hannah.
Thanks, Yvonne. I was feeling a little bit nervous earlier today about coming up on stage and talking to you all, but then after that inspirational performance by the young people from Redwood, I think all my nerves dissipated, and I have a new motto for public speaking, which is be more Finley. If I can get a tiny fraction of the joy that he showed in being on this stage into my presentation, then I'll be delighted. So, I'm the Chief Executive of the Portsmouth Naval Base Property Trust, or the Portsmouth Historic Dockyard Trust, or the Portsmouth Heritage Group Society Trust Dockyard something. Incredibly confusing name, or it actually does exactly what it said on the tin, but not quite. Currently working with the board on a rebrand, and I bet most of you don't have a clue who we are or what we do. So that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. These are our charitable objects, which were laid down when the trust was formed in the early 80s. I really wouldn't bother. You will lose the will to live, as does everybody who reads them. It's very beautifully drafted by a very, very clever lawyer who I know, but unfortunately not the most zingy presentation, and it doesn't give you a particular flavour of who we are or what we do. So we had a little bit of a play with it this year, last year even, to try and communicate more effectively to the city who we are and what we stand for. So, as custodians of historic buildings, boats and spaces in and around Portsmouth Harbour, we breathe new life into this naval heritage, creating energy and vibrancy, ensuring that it is sustainable and accessible for all. We're an ambitious and collaborative charity. We actively create authentic, educational, enjoyable places, experiences and opportunities. So under our care, we have the footprint of the historic dockyard on long lease from the MOD. And on the other side of the water, we have around 40 acres at Priddy's Hard in Gosport, which some of you may know. And so those two sites together form an incredible part, not just of Portsmouth's heritage, but of our nation's heritage. The historic dockyard is one of the most stunning places on earth. You can stand in a particular location and you're standing next to a dry dock built by Henry VII in the 1400s, and you're looking at a cutting-edge aircraft carrier, and you've got 800 years of naval history in a single glance. I think I'll be ballsy and say I don't think there's anywhere else in the world where that is possible. Steve spoke earlier about not necessarily appreciating what's on our doorstep. Oh, it's Warrior, it's Victory, yeah, the Mary Rose just over there. These are things that people travel around the world to see. We are so incredibly privileged. So, as the custodians of the land itself, what do we want to do? So, our strategic aims, we want to preserve it. It's important that we conserve, restore, and regenerate these assets, that they're not just sitting there as dead spaces. It's important that we develop not just the assets, but also ourselves. Like any charity, we have to be sustainable. That means financially sustainable. So we need to make sure that we take a long-term view to be around for hundreds of years to care for these assets. Educate. We need to educate people in what they're seeing. Our partners in the Dockyard, the Mary Rose and the National Museum do an absolutely phenomenal, world-class job, award-winning, Dom, in educating people. But we're not necessarily telling the story of the dockyard itself yet, and that's something that we want to address. Enjoy, absolutely crucial. We want to work with our heritage partners and others to develop and manage a world-class visitor destination centred on the historic Dockyard, and also to build a happy, thriving community at Prowse. We had a long debate about the inclusion of the word happy there. Can you build a place to be happy? I believe you can. I believe if you make the right decisions in terms of infrastructure and provision and community, and you actually build from the bottom up and make the choices with happy as your end goal, you can create the conditions in which a happy community can exist. So how are we starting to do that already? I talk endlessly about wanting to break down the wall to the Dockyard. It's listed, I can't. But I'm very conscious that the Dockyard was built hundreds of years ago to exclude people. It was a naval establishment. So that wall along by Victory Gate and Queen Street can feel intimidating. The broken glass on the top probably doesn't help. It's a very scary wall. The Commodore needs it to be that way, and that's fine. But we need to ensure that we are welcoming people into that space, and we have to go beyond physical infrastructure as a way of trying to do that. So we're looking at various ways that we can reach out into the city and into the community to encourage people to come in who wouldn't normally do so. Last year, we set up a partnership called Ankle Deep Studios. So that's the Sustainable Conservation Trust working with Portsmouth University and with Anglepoise to create a creative space where students from the university come and use the Dockyard for inspiration. They work on projects, real-life projects that we create for them, and they respond creatively to the space around them. I believe enormously in the power of heritage to inspire, and this has been beautifully borne out with this project, which continues to grow and to flourish. On the left, you can see some of the images. We tasked the students with coming up with some merchandise. If we were to sell merchandise to do with the Dockyard itself, you go to a tourist attraction, you can buy things, you go to the National Trust shops, they have beautiful things, often related to the space where you are. So we tasked the students with coming up with something that actually responded to the Dockyard itself. And they came up with some beautiful imagery and some booklets and things that can be printed on tote bags and things that can be printed on scarves. And in the next couple of years, we hope to bring things into production and to have a rolling partnership with the university where we're showcasing the very best of craft designed by our youngsters. They've taken over the space in a brilliant and zany way, and I love going down there every day and seeing what they've done with it. It's truly inspiring. One of the students took some flags that we gave her from signal flags from Boathouse 4 that we had left over, created some brilliant textile work and was actually a finalist in a UK Fashion Awards up in London with the work that was created from the Dockyard, inspired by the Dockyard. The filming was done in the Dockyard. Obviously, as you can see, some of the photography down in Southsea, but an absolutely brilliant piece of inspiration that we were really, really proud to have helped to generate. We have an artist in residence in Pete Codling, who I'm sure is known to many of you, doing his brilliant crowd project, which is about the faces of Portsmouth and the community over the last 800 years. If you haven't been to see this work of art, I seriously encourage you to do so. It's completely free to see. He's working in the bottom of Storehouse 9 in the Dockyard. So up the Dockyard, first big building on the left. But he's drawing in charcoal onto sails that are the size of the mainsail from the Mary Rose. And it's a beautiful, beautiful illustration of how vibrant and how diverse the community of Portsmouth is and has been. So I would encourage all of you to engage either online or in person. Any great destination needs good food, and this is something that is a journey in progress at the moment. We've been working with our partners at Baxter Story to look afresh at the offering that we have in the Dockyard. The first of the outlets that we've started to look at is Boathouse 4 restaurant. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are aware that there is a fantastic restaurant in the top of Boathouse 4, which looks out on one side over Boathouse itself and on the other out over the pontoons. So we were really lucky to have Ruth Handsome, who is the chef there in the khaki on the bottom left. She's just intimidatingly young and talented. She was a finalist on the Great British Menu, worked at the Ritz, and has fallen in love with our great waterfront city, which is no surprise to any of us. And Ruth has devised a fantastic menu using local produce, and we're really, really proud of that restaurant now. The guys are at the back and have a stand. I believe they've got some special offers on today if you go and grab vouchers. But yeah, we're starting to create a destination that it's worth coming to. Can I just ask, by a show of hands, how many people went into the Dockyard last year? Ooh, goody. That was more than I expected. Please come again. Another part of the Dockyard that you may not see so much are our pontoons out the back of Boathouse 4, where we have the Memorial Flotilla and a fantastic collection of small boats connected with our naval history. Vic 56, an old steamship, she's a fully functioning steamship. It's quite remarkable. It's like going inside a dragon. But she was one of the victualling vessels that was used to take provisions out to Navy ships in the harbour. We're looking at what we can do with this collection of historic vessels. Obviously, any kind of mobile heritage is insanely expensive to run, but needs to be preserved for our nation and for history. We call it kinetic interpretation. If people can see, touch, ride on, experience vessels, they engage in a completely different way to seeing something static in a museum. And taking young people out on the water has been one of our great joys in the last year or so. So 102, HSL 102 was an RAF launch she actually saw service in the Battle of Britain, and trying to convey to young people that this vessel was actually at a major historic moment, and they can ride on it and they can blast round the Solent at 30 knots. It's really quite exceptional. Foxtrot 8 has been our great success story of the last year, our little landing craft. She saw active service in the Falklands, and we do trips out during the summer, every weekend, and looking at during the weekdays as well. £10 a head, £30 for a family of 4. We're trying to make it deliberately accessible for people. And of course, accessibility-wise, she is a landing craft. So you enter through the bow ramp. So we've been able to take people out on the water with mobility issues who haven't been on the water for years. And that's been absolutely brilliant to be able to do that. Of course, it's not just taking young people out. We are creating a charter business for businesses as well, for corporate away days. So we're bringing together our partnerships with Baxter Story and the Boathouse 4 restaurant, and our boats, and the Powder Monkey Brewery over in Gosport, who are our fantastic tenants over there, and trying to create corporate packages, not just for local businesses, but also to bring businesses down from London. Very, very keen to partner with people in that. As Steph was talking about bringing cruise business in, how can we bring people down to London, from London as well, and spread the money around? Some of the more fun things we get to do is honouring the heritage of our vessels. Motor Gunboat 81 saw active service on D-Day. She was stationed just off Sword Beach on D-Day. And in fact, there's a patch inside. You can see where she was shot on D-Day and has been repaired. So for the last 2 years, we've held D-Day celebrations in the Dockyard, and we've been fortunate enough to have veterans down with us. And actually, you can just about see on the gunboat there, we actually got the veterans out on the water, and they had a wonderful time. They're all very badly behaved, but absolutely fantastic experience to speak to them. And last year, we combined D-Day and the Jubilee and tried to encourage people from wards in Portsmouth that wouldn't traditionally see themselves as coming into the Dockyard. Often those wards where their families were Dockyard workers in the past, but they're a little bit put off by the big scary wall and the men with guns on the gate. And we're trying to welcome them in and say, no, this is your heritage. This is part of your history and your community. We're trying to encourage people to see this as the historic quarter of the city, as well as the historic Dockyard. this is a fundamental part of the city. It can be an enormous draw nationally, internationally, to bring people down to Portsmouth, and we want to behave as part of the city. So we've been supporting some other charities as well. The Royal Navy Royal Marines charity set up a pop-up shop in Boathouse 5 last year, which was fantastically well attended. They do brilliant work supporting the families of our serving Navy, and we're looking to work with them more into the future and see how we can support naval families with historic naval infrastructure. We've also been working with the school's field gun, and they've been having tournaments in the Dockyard, which is again something I hope we can encourage. Any form of activity that gets young people out, engaged with their heritage and active in a great location is only to be encouraged, surely. So Boathouse 4, a lot of you may have seen it, and Yvonne mentioned earlier the International Boat Building Training College that is based there for another month. And will shortly be closing. When I came in and took over as CEO, the IBTC was running, and it's a fantastic facility teaching wooden boat building. Unfortunately, there's not the most ginormous demand for wooden boat building, and we weren't, I felt, serving our charitable purpose effectively using this facility for a dwindling number of people. And so I did something slightly revolutionary and actually spoke to industry to try and find out what the businesses around the Solent, the boat building businesses, need. At around the same time, I was appointed onto the National Shipbuilding Skills Office UK Government Task Force. So I sit with about 19 other people from around the country looking at our boat building and shipbuilding pipelines and how we support that industry. So I partnered with British Marine and went out to industry and said, what skills do you need? Where is the skills gap? And the feedback that came back to us was it's that pipeline at the bottom. It's getting youngsters engaged. But the dropout rate from apprenticeships is quite high. And often young people engage and then disengage because they're not really sure what it is they're getting into. Also, the marine industry doesn't have great visibility. Youngsters don't play games that are related to the marine industry necessarily. There are people within our own communities, youngsters who've never actually been out on the water. They can live right next to it, but have never been on it and never engaged with what maritime business means. So how do we start to break down those barriers? Last year we had 3 Kickstart students with us, which was absolutely fantastic. They came from the job centre and came to work with us, and all 3 went on into employment. And I thought, well, what if we could do more of that? What does that look like? That shorter period of engagement, deep immersion in training, and then providing a funnel into business. And so what we came up with is this, the British Marine Academy. So we're going to be working in partnership with British Marine to create a training academy in Boathouse 4, which is going to train young people and those needs into the skills that the marine industry are telling us that they want and need. So the premise for this course is that they come, and on the first day, the young people are taken out on a boat ride because you've got to do inspiration. You've got to show that this is exciting. And by the end of the first week, they've taken their RYA Level 1 powerboat course. They've got something, they go home at the end of the first week, you've achieved something. You've got a certificate. You've got a qualification, and it was really good fun, even in the rain. You'll see dotted through on Fridays are site visits, so we're going to be taking people around to different businesses, showing them what it means to be in work, showing them the different opportunities that are available to them after the completion of this. And you'll see we intersperse practical training, rigging and engine work and joinery with sales training, digital marketing, customer service. The aim is that at the end of this, every student who's been through this course will be able to come out and be useful in the world of work in a very, very direct, applicable way. A lot of marine businesses are SMEs, and they can't necessarily afford the time or the manpower to go into training apprentices. It's tough, and it costs an awful lot of money. And also, trying to draw down on the apprenticeship levy is a nightmare. So hopefully, this will ease the process and condense it in. It's still an idea very much in development. We're working both with government through the National Shipbuilding Office and with British Marine members to see how we can work on funding this. But the aspiration is that students studying on this will be paid the living wage to train as well. We're not expecting anybody to try and do this. We don't want any barriers to access. And so we'll be looking at paying living wage as well. So over on the other side of the water in Gosport, I mentioned the Powder Monkey Brewery, which is going from strength to strength. They created the award-winning Mary Rose beer, amongst many others. They host a monthly market, a farmers' market of local produce and local businesses, which I would encourage you to take a look at. It's gorgeous. That too goes from strength to strength and is beginning to build a community around in Gosport. We've renovated a small shifting house on the historic Camber from the 1700s. The shifting house is where people used to get change before they handled explosives. It was a defunct building, and we've turned it into a gorgeous little holiday let, available on Airbnb, very reasonable, star reviews. But it's all part of that regeneration piece, trying to bring historic buildings back to life and to create enterprise. We have a master plan for the site over at Priddy's. It's going to take a while. The flood defences are going to be interesting. But in the meantime, we're looking at creating artist studios. We've been talking with Artworks, and we're looking at bringing more artists and craftspeople into studio space over in Priddy's. We're looking at bringing, you'll see down in the bottom right where it says public building, I want to put a theatre there. I want to have an open-air, like the Minack Theatre in Cornwall, where you have the sea as the backdrop. So we're going to start bringing culture and events into this space as we start regenerating it. It'll be a lifetime's work, but that's the direction of travel. And I think it's been spoken about before, the importance of the connectivity across the water. It's absolutely crucial that we get greater connectivity across the water. I want to try and renovate a few more of our boats and get a permanent transport link going between Priddy's Hard and the Dockyard and Royal Clarence Yard, who were sadly let down with their promise of connectivity previously. But we need to open up and speak to each other across the water. So this is all about doing things together in this conference, and none of this is possible without partnership. I'm really lucky in the Dockyard to have two fantastic partners in the form of Dominic Jones and Dominic Tweddle of the Mary Rose and National Museum of the Royal Navy. And we're working together to make the Dockyard the best destination that it can be and the greatest draw for Portsmouth. The connectivity across the water I mentioned, absolutely crucial. So the top-level support that we've enjoyed on both sides of the water is really crucial to us. And the Lib Dems too, Steve. But we really appreciate working as part of our community and with the fantastic partnerships we have. I hope that tells you a little more about what the Portsmouth Heritage Royal Dockyard Naval Base Trust does, and look forward to seeing you in the Dockyard soon. Thank you very much.